Welcome to episode 6 of the Seed Growers Podcast. I'm Dan Brisebois, seed grower at Tournesol Cooperative Farm and spreadsheet and crop planning enthusiast. With the Seed Growers Podcast, I want you to get inspired to go out and save some seed on your farm. Before we start, I wanted to mention I'm giving a free online workshop called Get Ready for Seed Harvest on Thursday, June 16th. This workshop is another way I'm trying to get market growers to save seed on their farm. This workshop will set you up so you don't miss your seed harvest windows in the middle of a busy farming season. Registration link is in the show notes. Helen Skiba of Artemis Flower Farm is this episode's guest. Helen Skiba is a flower farmer outside of Boulder, Colorado, who sells her fresh flowers through farmers markets, weddings, wholesale, and a flower CSA. Helen also sells Dahlia tubers and Dutch flower bulbs through her website. In this episode, Helen talks about how she integrates saving seed into a cut flower farm for on-farm use, about how she decides what flower varieties to save seed from based on her needs to maintain specific colors for her floral designs, and whether the seed is open-pollinated. For this episode's technical section, Helen talks about 2 crops. First, Bupleurum seeds saved from cut flower plantings that germinate better than any seed she buys. And second, everything about Dahlia tubers from planting through to harvest and division and storage, and managing Dahlia sales and harvest goals with spreadsheets. This episode is sponsored by the Organic Seed Alliance. Organic Seed Alliance is a US-based nonprofit that advances ethical seed solutions to meet food and farming needs in a changing world. OSA's work ensures an abundant and diverse supply of ecologically grown seed, tended in perpetuity by skilled and diverse communities of seed stewards. To advance this mission, we serve growers working with seed at any scale through participatory research, practical education, policy advocacy, and network development. Join our online seed community at organicseedcommons.org, search our resources at seedalliance.org, and read recommendations for advancing organic seed at stateoforganicseed.org. On a personal note, I also want to mention the Organic Seed Conference that OSA puts on every 2 years. I first went in 2008, and I learned so much about growing seed and the business of seed during the conference, and met so many seed growers, breeders, and seed companies. It was the single most influential and formative experience in my seed growing career. If you're serious about seed, you should give it a try. This episode is also sponsored by the Bauta Family Initiative on Canadian Seed Security. Seedheads is the cross-pollinating podcast where our Canadian seed heroes tell their stories, share their how-to tips, and talk about the seeds they love. Join Steph Benoit and Hugo Martorell as they host conversations that are both technically useful and personally inspiring, as guests share the myriad ways that seeds are at the center of our lives as growers and eaters. If you're interested in hearing from people who are passionate about saving, stewarding, and sharing seed, subscribe to Seedheads in your favorite podcast app, or go to seedsecurity.ca/podcast and get started with seasons 1 and 2 of Seedheads today. Seedheads is a podcast inspired by Canadian seed growers and hosted by the Bauta Family Initiative on Canadian Seed Security, a program of seed change. Season 3 is coming in 2022, as always, with episodes in French and English. I'm subscribed to the Seedhead podcast, and I can't wait to listen to Season 3. Hi, Helen Skiba. Welcome to the Seed Growers Podcast.
Thanks so much, Dan. I'm super happy to be here. I've been really enjoying all the episodes. It's so exciting that you're doing this, and especially like all the women that you've had on. It's been really cool to see all those lady seed growers out there, and and I'm just thrilled. Last time we talked in person or like one-on-one was way back when you were starting the Farmer Spreadsheet Academy. So it's really cool to see everything you've done since then.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks. And it's been fun to watch what you've been doing since then. And I wanted you to come on the podcast because you're a cut flower grower and you save some of your own seed. And like as a vegetable grower, saving seed requires a lot of extra steps in some cases. But with flowers, in some cases, I know it's not true all the time, but you're almost there. So I think it's just a perfect fit. And I really want more people who grow flowers to think about that extra part of it, of the saving the seed. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, and you're spot on. I mean, it's just a little bit longer that you have to wait to get that seed. And often it's just happening anyway because you can't cut every flower because we plant so much. and the flowers are usually so abundant. So it's really, yeah, it's natural, I feel like.
Why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about where you're farming and how the climate where you are affects saving seed?
Yeah, so we are about 10 minutes northwest of of Boulder, Colorado. So we're between Boulder and Longmont, and it's really beautiful here. I mean, it's farmland, but we're really close to, not a major city, but a city that really enjoys its fresh produce, fresh local produce. So we're on what's known as the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains, meaning we're right up against the foot of the mountains where, the Rockies start to rise up out of the, and so our weather, and so we're at 5,280 feet, a mile high. And so that means mostly what we get is lots of sunshine. We have 300 days of sunshine. We have many cloudless days. And we also have really, really low humidity all the time. Like this spring, it's been abnormally dry, really detrimentally, but, as low as 6% humidity. But normally we're around 30 to 40%. So it's just dry air, which means, it just can be hard to keep the plants hydrated. So even if you've got plenty of water in the soil, often they lose a lot of moisture through just their plant bodies, their leaves, to the air. Now that's, it's really helpful, I would say, to have that dry of a climate for seed saving because, our seeds often dry down on the plant, or it's really easy for us to dry them in the field. So it's not necessarily a bad thing in that sense for processing, but I don't think that, often we get as plump or as fully developed of a seed as we could if we haven't done our due diligence with watering and protecting the plants and making sure that they get that nutrition and water that they need at the very end when they're, finally making that fruit and viable seeds.
Yeah, so the second part is easier, but the first part is where the challenge comes in with the dryness.
Exactly.
Do you want to share your seed story? What brought you into first saving seeds?
So interesting. I feel like I always have loved plants. My parents are biologists, both of them. And so we have always been a family that looks closely at things. My parents would take me backpacking and hiking and camping and everything, out here in the beautiful Mountain West when I was a kid. And I just notice things, I have noticed plants and seeds my whole life. And my dad was always telling me, the scientific names of things. He knows a lot of Latin and just really helping me get to know the plant world and the bird world and all the creatures. And so I think that it's just like a natural way of experiencing the rest of a plant's life cycle and just a way of noticing what the plant is doing and a way of knowing the plant and knowing therefore the place that you live in or the place where you are. When I was in the Peace Corps in Ecuador as an agriculture volunteer, and there were a lot of seed saving happening there and a lot of artwork that was made with seeds. So in the Amazon, there are these really beautiful seeds called San Pedro, and which I know is also a cactus, but this one is a really beautiful seed that's very shiny and it's part red and part black. And there's a lot of, like a bright, almost looks like nail polish red. They're just really, really beautiful seeds that people make jewelry from. And, as part of my agricultural volunteering there, I was just out in the woods and the forest. I was in the jungle. I was in the Amazon jungle near Napo, the Napo River near Tena. And, they're indigenous farmers. And so they were always saving seeds. They planted a lot of yucca. That is just basically a vegetatively propagated plant. And then there was all of this art making with the seeds from different plants. And then just lots of propagation in different ways. And I really, really enjoyed getting to know those people kind of through their seeds. And then when I started farming in earnest, I wasn't that interested in seed saving at first, but then I had this amazing intern, Alex Zeidner of Folks Farm and Seed. So he's got his own farm now. I had him as an intern one year, and he didn't need to be an intern. That was the position I had open. But he's a great farmer, and he just started talking to me about saving seed and showing me the seeds that he'd saved, and he introduced me to his mentor Rich Pecoraro, and I just loved it. I mean, it was so special to me to be able to, first of all, let the plant do what it is trying to do the whole time, and then to see the changes that it goes through while it's doing that. Just a really, really special. And then, of course, the whole thing about just having part of your past to take into the future, like the whole circle of seeds, is very grounding. And I think people in the podcast have said in the past too, it's very empowering to have that sovereignty over what you're able to produce in seasons to come. And yeah, I think the process is just fascinating too. So I started just learning more about it and like what to do and what not to do. And I just started really easy. It's basically if things were going to seed, I would just gather them and crack them open and look at them and watch them come to maturity. And I was just fascinated by that. Something about it is even more fulfilling than cutting the flower. It's finishing the work, I feel like. And I can't do it with a lot of things, but the things that I can do it with are really special and important to me. I mean, I have crops now that are probably third or fourth generation, maybe even fifth generation of my own seed that I've been planting out. And that's something I feel like is really like mine and belongs to the land here. And it's just irreplaceable.
I'm really curious what you haven't been able to save seed from that you wish you were saving seed from of these flowers.
Sure. I mean, the issue is that I really just grow so many different varieties and so many different colors, and the colors are really, really important. But I also don't have, like, the way I grow is very intensive. So I'll often take for zinnias, for example, I'll often have 7 or 8 different colors of zinnia in the same bed. And I'm not familiar enough with zinnias seed saving because I didn't even give it a try to know like if they're sulfurs or if they cross commonly. But, to me, it's just something that I didn't want to mess around with because the varieties that exist are already really great cut flowers. And I didn't want to save seed that I didn't know that it was going to be the right color, because I very specifically choose colors for my markets. It has to be the right color. I can't just say it's fine if it's a mix. I really need the whites and I need the salmon color, the pinks, and I need those queen lime orange and stuff. So I just haven't found a way to do the flower farm and isolate certain varieties.
I find that's interesting because I thought your answer was going to be about, season length or just more about the species itself. But your answer really is the isolation distances and needing specific colors for your markets and for your designs.
Yes, definitely. That's a good question though, to think about it in that way. What have I not been able to save seed from? I feel like most of the varieties that I grow do go to seed in the season that I have. My cat is so annoying. So some of them, some things that I can't save seed from would be like a mahogany splendor hibiscus, because it just doesn't flower in our season, in our climate. And then tons of hybrid seed. I grow a lot of hybrid seed because that's just what's available in the flower world. And it's also, for example, snapdragons, right? The best snapdragons are hybrids. They're the ones that have really thick stems. They have the right colors. They're, I can grow them at the right time of year, based on their earliness or their seasonality, groups 1, 2, 3. So I grow those hybrid seeds, and so I wouldn't save seed from them because I just really, again, don't know what I'm going to get. And so that predictability is really important to me when, because I work with a wholesale collective, so they need to know every week. Like I have to be able to predict, here is what I'm going to have next week. And so if I have a bed of mixed zinnias or mixed snapdragons or something that I can't rely on, then it's just too hard for me to fulfill those orders. But yeah, like so most of the varieties, if I let them go, will go to seed in our season here.
Before we get too far into the discussion, maybe for our listeners, would you mind describing a bit about how you sell your flowers and the business part of your operation?
So first of all, we are part of the Treehouse Farm Collective. And that is just a group of 3 farms, and we are leasing the land from our landowners from another farmer couple, Alice and Carl Starrick of the Golden Hoof. They're an animal operation, but they have this property as well. And so we lease our land from them, and then we, as the Treehouse Farm Collective, and then we sublease it to our individual businesses, and we sublease to some other businesses that use different parts of the farm. So yeah, so the Treehouse Farm Collective, we are just a group of farmers, and we're trying to, this property has a really high rent. And so by farming it together and dividing the land and dividing the sort of infrastructure, we are able to afford this land in common. And we all have our own separate businesses and our own separate parts of the land, but we're able to share different resources. We share the water, we share the electric bill, we share all the utilities. And then of course we can order in quantity together. Having everybody's brains on the farm and everybody's smiles and laughter is just really amazing. So it's an awesome group of folks. And we did another podcast for the Collaborative Farming podcast about it, and that was really fun. Folks can listen about us there. But as far as Artemis Flower Farm, right now we are on 1.25 acres of this farm, and we also have a little bit of extra room over in our northeast field. I'm going to be growing just big successions of sunflowers there. So we market our flowers in a lot of different ways at this point, and I'm really working toward paring down our outlets, but it's tough for me. I'm definitely an overachiever, and I'm a wintertime optimist. So I will, be like, yes, we'll definitely have so many flowers, and we'll be able to do farmers market and CSA and weddings and workshops. So that's our list of things that we do, is the farmers market up in Nederland, Colorado, every other week. And then we do, I do have about 20 weddings this year. So I also do floral design. And then we have a small CSA. So I have about 20 members in my spring CSA, and it's looking like more like 30 members for the summer, which is great. And then we've got, I do wholesale sales to the Colorado Flower Collective. So they are a local only wholesaler. So florists can order through them and get access to products from all of the flower farms on the Front Range, which is now quite a few. And then we do on-farm workshops. So I have a lot of floral design workshops. I'm doing 3 different centerpiece design classes. Oh, no, I'm doing 4. So spring centerpiece class coming up next weekend. And then 3 different summer centerpieces. Plus I do some gardening workshops on dahlias in particular, and then bulbs as well, because my partner Nelson, his family, well, he and his family are Dutch, and they have been importing tulip bulbs from the Netherlands for about 60 years. So his grandfather started that business, and now his dad is doing most of that work. And then we are retailing those bulbs here on the Front Range, and we've been shipping all over the country, but also, doing a lot of pickup orders from our local flower farmer friends. So let's see, is that all of it? Did I say anything else? Yeah. Oh, and then we also have our Dahlia tuber sales, and again the bulb sales. So we have a lot going on. Again, I'm really trying to pare down. I started as a wedding flower farmer, so it's almost exclusively weddings. Now I'm trying to move away from that. It's just tempting because it is a really good revenue source. And, I am able to do the design and do the value added work there. And I'm set up for it. I have a lot of experience in it. But I'd really like to be just wholesaling and doing workshops. Like those two things really give me joy, because people coming to the farm and just the joy that they experience on the farm, growing and looking at flowers and playing with flowers, and then wholesaling, like just getting a lot of product out there and it's really high quality, like that makes me feel really good. So eventually we'll get to that place if I can just start saying no to some things.
So you've got a lot of cut flowers in your fields, and how does seed saving integrate into your farm, into your daily operations, or into your season? How does that look? Do you know from the beginning of the season what you want to save seed from? Like, is that something you intentionally make a plan in before you go to the season?
Sometimes. I mean, there is a plan. Like I'm usually always going to save safflower, Bupleurum, Queen Anne's lace, and purple lace flower, or Daucus caratus, but it's just a purple carrot flower. I'm almost always going to save those. So I know that from the beginning. But then, certain things will come up that I'm like, oh, that'll be really easy to save seed from, right? Especially if it's something that I'm experimenting with and I haven't grown it out before. So last year it was this cool thing called mallow, not the evil weed, but this really nice flowering plant that grew really well in our worst soil and made these adorable sort of hibiscus looking flowers. And then these very lovely seed heads that, just popped open and there the seeds were, and easy to clean. So that was just serendipitous. And often, that's how I started. It was just like, oh, there's the seed. I think I'll just sort of let that happen and then grab it. So I definitely know the things that I want to save seed from, but then, I often am just gathering seed as I go as well.
So you have your do you do any selection during the season of individual plants that you're going to be saving seed from, or is it that it's the ones that kind of get away and don't get harvested that you're saving seed from?
It's both. It's definitely both of those things. So, but I have done some selection. Particularly, I have a scabiosa variety that is a lavender type that I've been growing out for the past 2 years, and I've never seen a lavender scabiosa anywhere else. There's purple, like a blue, and there's dark reds, and there's yellows and whites. But this one was a really pale, lavender purple. And I got that a couple of years ago, just, was a rogue in the field. So I tagged it, saved it, grew it out, tagged it, saved it again. And this year will be the third year with that. And yeah, so I've just been selecting those over time. And then when I'm doing other seed saving, I do try and go for those best looking and fattest seed heads. And definitely, so like Rich Pecoraro always says, you want the middle 50%, right? The first 25% is too early, then you're selecting for plants that are going to seed too fast. And then, the last 25% are ones that are too late. They're too late maturing. So you're selecting for that. So you want those middle maturing plants. So I do try to do that. In that, I let that first group go. And then the ones that are harvestable are like ready for harvest after that first kind of wave goes. Those are the ones that I want. And then after that, I'll just clear the bed. So that's the way that I'm sort of doing selection on that. And then of course, for me, it's all about how it looks. So if there's some special characteristic about a plant, whether it's that lavender scabiosa, or let's say it's like a really vigorous Bupleurum plant, then I will absolutely like tag those and go after them as the season goes on. But and then there's also there's the seed, let's get some, for next year because it's there, so there's a little bit of method, but there's a lot of madness.
What does tagging look like? And do you tag when you're actually harvesting for cut flowers, or is it that you kind of pay attention where something is and then you'll go back later and make sure you find it?
I do tag with like a flagging tape. That's it. Just a flagging tape around the base of the plant. And then, and I do that when I'm harvesting for cut flowers. Absolutely. Some things I can't really do that for because some of them are single stems. And so, there's always this, I'm torn where it's like, if it's something that I want to save seed from, but it's very beautiful, I also want to cut it for sale, so it's sometimes a tough decision for me to say, like for Bupleurum, for example, that can be a one cut plant. And so when it's really good, I'm cutting the heck out of it because it's such a great greenery. And so to try and save something that is really gorgeous and perfect and exactly what I need at that time for my floral work is a tough choice. But I do that, so I do make that choice a lot of the time. What's great about it is, of course, there's often many lovely, beautiful plants, and I can pick one or two and they'll give me great seed, and enough seed. Some plants are just really, really prolific seed producers. So
I feel like we're about to get into more of a technical conversation, and I don't know if I want to do that so quickly. Is there anything else about like just how seed saving integrates into your farm that I should ask right now?
Sure. Maybe you could ask me about like when I do processing or something.
Okay. So Helen, when? Sorry.
Do you want me to just talk about it, or you want to ask?
You could say. So at what point do you do your seed processing?
Yeah, so usually it takes a back seat until the end of the season. I'm just so busy until October. There's just almost no time. What I do in general is cut the seed, dry it either in the field or depending on the crop, I might bring it into the greenhouse, and I will put it on these kind of tubs that we have, or a tarp or something, as long as there's room in the greenhouse. And I'll just leave it there for a while until I have a minute to get to it. It often is just cutting it, and maybe, for some things I cut it, I put it in a bucket. It goes right into a bucket just with the whole plant, or, if it's something that's kind of green, usually it's not, usually they're pretty dry in the field. So if it's something that's kind of greenish though, I will spread it out, but often I can harvest the whole seed head directly into a bucket and just not really worry about mold. Cause again, we're in such a dry climate.
I envy that quite a bit at times.
Yeah. So it's just nice to just throw it in a bucket and then wait until October, sometimes September if I'm feeling, pretty good on a certain day, or it's windy, or I just like need a different task, and I'll just go and start threshing and winnowing and sifting. So, but it tends to be a task that I wait until September or so to do. I love doing it. Like I love seed processing. And so it is often something that I'll just do because I feel like it in the middle of the season when I need a different thing to do, something that take my mind off of just making bouquet after bouquet after bouquet after bouquet.
What volumes do you handle of any specific seed?
It can get pretty big. So right now with safflower, I think I'm not sure on the poundage of that, but I do have like 3 gallons of it, if that's helpful. And it's a pretty big seed, but I have like a 3-gallon bucket full of that, and it's a great cover crop too. So it's easy to sort of use that. And then Bupleurum, it's a smaller seed, but I think I have a similar amount of that at this time. Many things it's very little, very, very little. So for example, I've saved some seed from blooming flowering tobacco, or a nicotiana, and those are dust. Basically, they're just tiny, tiny, tiny seeds.
And a million seeds in that little
so
teaspoon.
many. Oh my God. so many. But I mean, I have probably, less than an ounce of that, but it's enough for several seasons of growing.
Do you have any special, or what kind of equipment do you use to thresh or extract or clean your seed?
I have my hands. I'm mainly just I'm mainly just for threshing. I'm breaking things apart or beating them in a bag or something like that. And now that I've listened to your podcast, I am definitely going to try rolling over my safflower with my truck. That seems like a way better idea than what I've been doing, just way less time. Basically putting it in a burlap bag and beating it with a stick. So I'm going to try the truck method. And then I have two sets of screens. So I have one that's made for gold panning. It's just like a plastic round plastic rim sieve with metal mesh. And I think there are 9 different sieves in that set. And then I also have a scientific soil measuring set or like sifting set. And so that one was pretty expensive. It's all stainless steel, but I really, really like that one because it's got really small mesh sizes, which I often need for those Nicotiana seeds. I like actually using both of the sifter sets because, sometimes one will work better or, just sifting it through each set multiple times will just give me a cleaner seed. So that's what I use for kind of size. And then for density, I'm just winnowing in front of a box fan with some tubs, and that works really well most of the time. It can be tough with some of the really small seeded things. You just have to be really, really careful, especially if you only have a small amount of seed. You just have to start that fan at a really low speed. Sometimes I even use like a tiny little window fan or like a little personal fan that you would use if you were a weirdo and you were walking down the street and you were fanning yourself. I sometimes will use one of those. And that can work well for something that's just tiny, tiny, tiny and you really need to be precise with. But safflower is so easy to clean once it's threshed. It's just fluff basically is the chaff. And so it gets really nice and clean. It's one of my favorite processes to do because you feel like you're a professional because it's so shiny and clean at the end.
So you mentioned discussing a couple crops, and the first one you suggested was talking about Bupleurum. Do you want to walk us through saving Bupleurum seed, or growing and then saving Bupleurum seed?
So I grow Bupleurum in a couple of different ways. And just in case anybody doesn't know, Bupleurum is also known as hare's ear. It has these beautiful little cupped leaves that sort of wrap around the stem. And then the seed head or the flower is sort of this chartreuse green umbel with a bunch of small flowers on a flat surface at the top. It's really lovely. It's great greenery. It is the way I grow it. I grow it in a couple different ways. I will direct seed it in the fall to have an early spring crop. I will direct seed it in the spring to have later spring crops, late and early summer. And then I will also transplant it. So I'll sow it in the greenhouse because it's easier to germinate in a cool soil, and it gets so hot here with the sun, and I don't have a great sprinkler system yet, and it's really hard for me to keep my direct seeded beds moist enough for Bupleurum. But I just want to have it all the time. It's just such a structural great greenery. So I seed it in the greenhouse in the summer, or when it's just too hot, the soil temperature is too hot. And then I'll transplant that out. And it's a bit of a pain because I grow so much of it. So I'm usually growing, 2 or 3 200 cell trays of Bupleurum at least every 2 weeks, if not every week. And then I'm planting that out. I do 6-row spacing and about 3 to 4 inches between the plants in the row. And that's on a 4-foot bed top. So that gives me really nice long stems and, a really good stand of plants. So then as it matures, it goes pretty quick once it's flowering. So you got to cut it, and you want to get it for those bouquets. And so it goes quick. And often, and that's why I first started saving it. Often you just miss it. You can miss whole beds sometimes, but then, you might miss those stragglers. And so, it's just really easy to start seeing the seeds form on top of that plant because they're just up there. They're just on top of the plant on this little flat umbel surface. And they're also really easy to tell when they are mature because, first of all, the plant starts to dry down as it's making seeds. So it starts to turn brown or yellow. And then the seed becomes very black. And there's no real shell or casing or anything around the fruit of the seed. I don't even know what the fruit is on the Bupleurum, if it's the seed itself is encasing is a fruit and is encasing a couple of embryos. But anyway, it just sits there. I mean, it just sits on top, and it's very easy to tell that it's mature because the plant's pretty dry, and then it's a dark, almost purple brown, and it gets kind of a sheen to it, a purple sheen. And what I do to sort of know when it's time to save any seed is that I just love looking at seeds in general. So when I'm sowing them, I'm like, okay, that's what it looks like when it's mature. It came to me in this seed packet like that. So I just remember it's brown, it's purple, it's whatever, it's hard or however it is. I just try to remember what it looked like when I received it. But Bupleurum, again, it gets this purple sheen. And at that point, it will start falling off the plant as well. So if you walk by, you will sometimes brush a plant and it'll just shake and the seeds will just fall on the ground. So I have lots and lots of self-seeded Bupleurum now, which is actually wonderful. So then, once it gets to that stage, I will go through with just a bucket. I just cut the seed heads off into a bucket because I don't really want to bother taking the whole plant out of the field. I don't need to do that for the seed saving. And again, this is often a task that I'm just fitting in between things. So, if I was more organized and, more planful about my bed flipping, I might have a tarp out and just cut the whole plant down onto the tarp and then roll that out of the field. But often, again, it's just a task that I'm doing maybe in the evening to kind of relax after I'm done working. And it's just a really pleasurable task too. So, and often what I'll have to do is bend the whole seed head over into the bucket just so the seeds don't fall off right away as I touch it. And then I'll cut the seed head off. And I also have done this in the past with that, where I'll just grab the plant in my hand and have the bucket ready and just sort of smash the seed off into the bucket. It's really easy. It just falls right off. So that's a fun way to do it as well. But when I'm trying to get lots and lots of seed, I will cut the whole seed head into the bucket. So that's the harvest. And then again, this seed really doesn't need any more drying. I will let it sit in that bucket for a week or so just to, see if any of that seed will after mature. But, then if I want to and if I have time, I will go ahead and thresh and winnow it. So threshing is, for me, it's just smashing it in a bucket or a bigger tub or something and just going through and rolling it with my hands, wearing gloves because it can be a little pokey at that stage. And then, and it usually just falls off really easily. It's not hard to get off of the plant. And then I'll just take that bucket and winnow in front of the box fan. And this is a nice heavy seed, very easy to clean with the box fan. Doesn't take a lot of time to do this at all. And my favorite thing about the Bupleurum, saving it, and the reason that I really went for it, is that I noticed that my saved Bupleurum seed just germinated so much better than anything I bought. And I think that's just a freshness thing. And also maybe a regional adaptation. Just the plants that went to seed here are the ones that, did well in our hot, dry climate. And so they're just better germinators and they're beautiful tall plants. I just can't recommend doing this seed enough because it's so much better than what you can buy.
And you mentioned that you tend to save some every year. Does it hold much? Like, is it as good a germinator in the second or third year, or is that why you're trying to get fresh seed?
No, it doesn't seem to be as good. It does seem to decline pretty quickly in viability. So actually, those 3 gallons of Bupleurum seed I have right now may not be all that great. I've noticed that the older lots are not as good at germinating. However, even so, it's worth it for me to have a lot of seed just because I grow it so much and so often. And it's worth it for me to have a lot of seed to go out and just really oversow because it doesn't mind being crowded. And so I can sow, at the densest planting that the seeder will let me. And it does really well in a stand like that. It likes to be with its friends. But yeah, it does seem to, I do want fresh seed every year. And plus it's just, like I said, it's such an easy thing to do and a pleasurable task for me. So I really enjoy doing it every year.
Now you mentioned that you'll direct seed some in the fall for an early spring crop. Is that from your fresh seed, or are you still using the previous year's seed at that point?
I might be using previous year's seed. It sort of depends on if I've done the winnowing and threshing yet, really, and if I've gathered all the seed that I want yet at that time, because I'll often save seed from various successions. I'm succession planting Bupleurum, probably 8 times in the season. And if I'm noticing that one of the successions is doing really well and I'd like to save seed from that, then I will just wait and do that. So for the fall sowing, I may be using the previous year's seed still.
Hey, you all, Farmer Jesse here. The goal of No-Till Growers is to help produce and create valuable niche content like what you're listening to now. We create several different podcasts, from the Winter Growers podcast hosted by Clara Coleman to the Collaborative Farming podcast with host Jackson Roulette and many more. We produce videos at the No-Till Growers YouTube channel, including farm tours and crop-specific breakdowns. And our entire model is to create helpful, valuable farming content that is free and open to the public, so anyone, anywhere can use it. So if you appreciate that and our work, or are simply enjoying this show, please consider signing up to be a patron at patreon.com/no-till-growers. There are also other support options at no-tillgrowers.com, or you can even purchase a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, because when you purchase it directly from no-tillgrowers.com specifically, the proceeds go to making you more amazing content like this. Okay, that's my spiel. Thanks, you all. Back to the show.
And so this is going to be a first time on the Seed Growers podcast that we're going to talk about a vegetative crop as opposed to one that you're saving the seed from. I think that's okay. But you wanted to talk about dahlias.
Yeah, it's something that we all do anyway. As flower growers, most of us anyway, we save our dahlia tubers. So, and I was just thinking about the crops that I was going to talk with you about, and I was like, oh, I don't sell any seed because, for various reasons, I don't want to get like a seed seller's license. It's too expensive, for what I feel like I could put into it. I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable or confident enough, I think, in my abilities to really let others rely on my seed quality. It's good enough for me, But dahlias are, something that I do sell, dahlia tubers, online in the winter. And it's actually a really great revenue source for me. And it's also at a really clutch time of year. This year, I would say maybe 10% of my revenue will come from those dahlia tuber sales. And, they happen mostly in January. Like a big chunk happens right when I open the shop in January. I really like the process of dahlia digging and dividing. I really like the logistics of shipping and taking orders and stuff. It's just a different task that I really like doing in the winter. It's change of pace. I'm just as you know, Dan, I am a spreadsheet person. And so I really like doing my spreadsheets with the dahlias and like figuring out which variety is producing the most tubers or the highest quality tubers, and then how how well they overwinter or survive the winter in storage. And then, putting those fudge factors into my spreadsheet so that I can know how many tubers I have to sell and how many I'm going to keep. So, but yeah, they're not a seed, and they are a clone of the parent plant, but it's really fun, and a great revenue source. Like I said, something that is a product that I can sell at that slow time of year. So dahlias are this amazing Mexican native, and they are basically in Mexico. The wild plants are a weed. They just grow kind of in the hillsides, and they're like a single flower form, and they are just gorgeous flowers. They do really well here in our climate. It's a great dahlia growing region, and the florists go insane for the local dahlias when they come on in August and September. Yeah, it's just, one of those plants that you become obsessed with, and you just want all of the varieties that you can get your hands on. And, they're just a lot of fun. They're a lot of work, but they're a lot of fun. So the way that I go about saving my dahlia tubers is I plant them in the spring I usually do 2 weeks before my last frost date. And I'm a little bit regretting that right now, because tomorrow we are having a weird winter storm. So it's 85 degrees today. Tomorrow we're getting a storm that will dump 4 inches of snow, and we're supposed to get down to 28 degrees and maybe lower. So my dahlia tubers went in around May 1st, and so they are starting to sprout. I'm not going to cover them because it's just too many beds, but they will be fine. If the sprouts that are up now freeze, the tuber will be protected by the soil, and it will, and the snow, hopefully, and they'll just send up another shoot. They're really amazing like that. You can take cuttings of dahlias and then plant that mother tuber out, and it doesn't care that it's been, it's had its shoot cut off. It'll just make more. So I plant them out. I do, in my 4-foot wide bed, I do an 18-inch, I do 2 rows, 18 inches apart. And then in the row, I plant a tuber every 12 inches or 1 foot. And I stagger them in the row. So there's plenty of room for them, lots of airflow, plenty of room for me to weed and trellis and pinch them and all the things that you do to dahlias. So that's how I plant them. Then once they have done their thing, what happens is the first frost comes, and they're
and so when you say done their thing, do you mean they made a flower that perhaps you cut and put in a bouquet? Is that the thing that you're talking about?
Yes. Yes. So once they have done the thing for me, which is usually I get 20 to 25 stems from a dahlia plant. So I'm cutting those, either wholesaling them or putting them in bouquets or in wedding arrangements, or we're using them in our workshops. So they've done that beautiful work for me. And then the first frost will come, and they're very, very, very dramatic. The first frost comes, and you come out in the morning, and the dahlia plants look still green, and there's sort of a layer of frost on them. Just they're sort of frosted and sparkling. It's a really beautiful day. I love this day because as soon as the sun hits those frosted leaves, the dahlia plant turns completely black, and it just looks like it melts. And it's just very obvious that they are completely finished. And so it's often a joyful time because, some people in our flower world, we call it Frostmas, because it's a celebration that we have finished with all of the things that we've had in the field, the zinnias, the dahlias, the cosmos, all the things that we have been cutting and cutting and cutting. And so it feels like, a definitive stop or slow down to the season, even though there are things that will still go past frost in the hoop houses, or some things that are hardy enough to last through a frost like that. But the dahlias are not. And so they turn black. What I do next is I let them just sit there for 2 weeks. I let them sit there and gather the energy from those blackened leaves and stems and make the tubers underground. They've been making tubers the whole season, but I like to let them get that last little bit of energy into the plant. So I let them sit there for 2 weeks. And then I come through with either a pruner, a hand pruner, or I'll go through with hedge shears or something and just chop off the plant down to about 6 inches. So I like to leave that 6-inch handle for myself. I would love to find a machine, like a mower of some kind, that I could set at like a 6-inch height. That would be a lot easier for me, since I'm doing about 1,200 foot beds of dahlias right now by hand, doing that cutting. I don't currently have a tractor that could do a flail mower and set it high, but that would be one way of doing it. So, cutting down all the stems and then leaving that 6-inch handle. Then we go through with spading forks or a broad fork or shovels. I like to use the spading forks because they don't chop the tuber in half. They just sort of pierce it if you get too close, and you can usually cut that off and still have a viable tuber. So about, we put our spading forks in about 6 inches away from the plant stalk, and we put the spade in deep as it will go. And then we just, lever back on that fork and lift the clump out of the ground. And that can take a couple of spadings on, 3 or 4 different sides of the stalk. But once you get it loose, you can grab that handle, that 6-inch handle of the stalk that you left. And I like to put my hand underneath the clump while I'm doing this and just pull the handle, put my hand underneath the clump, and make sure that I'm supporting all the tubers that I can, because this is the stage when the tuber necks will get broken if you just jerk the whole plant out of the ground. So you just want to be gentle. And then as you're doing that, you're sort of peeling or crunching the soil off of that clump of tubers with your hands. So at the end of a day of tuber digging, my hands are usually really, really sore, because I'll be using my fingertips to just get in there among the different tubers and get as much dirt off as I can, so that I'm not taking all the soil out of the field with the clump. The biggest part about dahlia digging is that you have to be so organized. You have to make sure that the varieties get into crates that are labeled, and that the right clumps are going into the right labeled crates, and that we always know the name of what variety we're digging, and it's always labeled, and it's always labeled on the crate or in multiple ways, or we throw the stake that says the name of the dahlia on top of the crate, or however it's labeled. We just have to know exactly what's in there, because I don't want to be sending out dahlia tubers that I don't know the variety, or I've mistakenly labeled it as something else, because people will complain. They will come to me in August of the following year, after I've sold them tubers in January, and they'll say, I got the wrong one, please refund me. And that's a bummer. It's a bummer to have to refund people. So we try really, really hard to not let that happen. Oh, I should mention that before we do the digging and during the season, we do try to rogue any plants. So that'll be just going through the field and flagging any plants that are not the variety that they are supposed to be, and making sure that we either don't dig those, or that we label the variety that it is on some flagging tape around the base of the plant, and just leaving those for a later digging, making sure that only the correct variety is getting into the crate that we take out of the field. So after we've got our varieties into crates, we take them over just to a makeshift wash station and sort of take each individual clump out, and we'll lay them on a mesh table, and then we will spray them off with water. So we use a lot of water in this process. It's kind of a bummer, but it is really the only way to get them clean enough to start dividing. We also will soak the clumps sometimes in like a wheelbarrow, a tub of water before we start spraying them off, and that helps loosen the dirt so we don't have to spray them for as long. So then once they're clean, and clean is, a relative term, once most of the soil is gone from the clump, what I look for is I just want to be able to see where all the tubers are joining the crown or the main stalk of the plant, so that I can go in with my snips later and cut all of the tubers apart from that main stalk. So we have to get them pretty clean in the middle. I don't worry as much about the tubers themselves being clean. I actually kind of prefer if they have a little bit of soil on them, because it will help them stay a little more hydrated. It will help them stay a little more hydrated as we are digging, as we are dividing them. So that's the digging and washing. And then once we've done, let's say one full bed of tubers, which would be about 200 clumps of tubers, then it's time to start dividing them. And I do like to sort of divide in waves. So I like to let the tubers sit in the soil as long as they need to, and then just dig them as I can when I'm dividing. So if I have a lot of people one day to help me, I will dig a lot more and wash a lot more, and then we'll divide all of those. So the difference here with our climate is that our tubers just cannot sit out in clumps. We just can't do that because they will dry up really, really quickly. It's just too dry here to wait until later to dig them, and then wait until later to divide them. So we have to divide them so that we can store them. It's too much space to store the clumps themselves. Once they're divided, it's a much less volume of plant material. So that's why I dig, wash, and divide, and pack and store in the fall. A lot of folks will, in wetter climates, will just dig the tuber clumps, set those clumps aside to divide in the deep winter when there's more time. But we really have to do it in the fall. So the dividing is just a labor, a long, long labor. It is days and days, and sometimes weeks and weeks of just sitting there with your snips and your pruners and whatever other tool you have that makes it go faster to divide all the dahlia tubers away from the main stalk. I try to, at this point, select the best tubers. So I'm not trying to save, unless it's like a variety that I really want a lot more of. I'm not trying to save all of the tiny tubers. I'm just trying to save the ones that are easiest to divide, that have eyes, very visible eyes that I can see, so I know that it's a viable tuber. Otherwise, it can just go in the compost. But over the years of doing this, I have kept track of how many tubers I'm getting from each clump, and on average, so many varieties are very, very different in their tuber production, but on average, you're going to get 7 tubers for every tuber that you plant. And that's with that selection of tubers at the end there. Now, some varieties will produce 20, 25 tubers that are viable and easy to divide. Some varieties will produce 3. But either way, you're exponentially multiplying your stock over just one season. And so that's one of the reasons that dahlias are so amazing, is that it's not the same. I mean, it's not the same as, let's say, digging and dividing a perennial that you may only get 1 or 2 divisions from. I mean, it is orders of magnitude bigger than what you have had in the past. Or that what you had even that same year. So it's just a lot of volume. And that's why, a lot of folks end up selling their tubers, because it's a valuable thing. And eventually you really just have too much for your farm. We'll see how we do this year, but I'm definitely expecting, let's see, I have 200. So I have 2,400 dahlia plants in the farm, in the soil this year. So, if you do the math, that's a ridiculous number of dahlia tubers, and I can't plant all of those. So I will be selling them. I have learned over the years too, like what varieties do well in sales. And so I will be saving fewer of the varieties that don't. When I hit the threshold of how many I can sell of, let's say, the Dahlia Cornell, which is a very common red ball dahlia, it's a fantastic cut flower, great variety, but it produces lots of tubers and a lot of people grow it. And so it's one of those things that you just can't sell too many of. I think I sold probably 100 tubers of Cornell this year, but I had like 400 for sale. So it just depends on the year too. But there are varieties that people really want, and they'll be sold out right away. So Rock Ron Ashley comes to mind, or a Cafe au lait.
So it sounds like a good fit because you get into a double harvest off of these, but you have to choose judiciously which ones you're going to do, because not all of them are going to be the best for your cut flower. Not all of them are going to be the best. Or maybe you just don't grow the ones that aren't good for cut flowers, and it's a secondary thing, the selection for the sales.
Right. Yeah. So I definitely only grow varieties that I trust as good cut flowers. Definitely. And over the years, I've trialed so many dahlias, just so many dahlias. And I've really narrowed it down now to the ones that do well for me, that are pest resistant, and that my customers like. And then as far as for sales, it's just a matter of only digging as many clumps as I need to hit the threshold of what I'm going to be able to sell. And so that's just a little bit of math. It's like I need to dig 100 Rock Run Ashley clumps so that I can get 700 tubers, so that I can plant 100 next year and sell 600 online. Just a little bit of math. But also there's that fudge factor in there. I usually plan on an 85% survival rate over the winter. That usually I have more like a 90% rate, but I like to play it safe, because it's really a bummer to not be able to fulfill somebody's order because you had, either, for us usually it's the tubers get too dry in storage, or because they've molded and rotted in storage. Speaking of storage, the next step after dividing, and I won't go into dividing because it's just not a process that I can explain auditorily. It's something you really have to do hands-on, or watch videos and look at the pictures. So I do offer a dahlia digging and dividing class in the fall, and that's always really, really fun. I have the folks out, and they go out and they dig their own clump, and then they divide their own clump, and they store it. And so whatever they dig is theirs to keep. But speaking of storage, the way I store my dahlia tubers is, once they're all divided and cleaned up and everything, I put them, this year what we're planning to do is get crate liners, so plastic bags that will fit into a standard bulb crate. And then I use a peat moss and wood shavings mixture, because the wood shavings are too dry and the peat moss is too wet. And so a 50-50 mix is really about right for us. Now, many people do different things. A lot of folks store their tubers in vermiculite, which is probably a really good call. I just think it's a little bit expensive, and you also kind of need something that will hold that vermiculite a little bit better than like a perforated bag, because it's usually like a fine vermiculite that you need. Anyway, that's probably a fine choice. And then there's other media too. Some folks go straight peat moss or straight wood shavings, and it kind of just depends on what works for you and your climate and the dryness of your storage area. But for us, we found that this 50-50 mix of peat moss and wood shavings is good. And I do actually moisten it a little bit, especially if that peat moss is really dry, because that's the thing that we struggle with, is the tubers drying out in storage. And so I moisten it a little bit, like the slightest bit. And then, do a layer of that on the bottom of the crate that has the perforated bag in it. And then a layer of tubers, a layer of mixture, a layer of tubers, layer of mixture. That seems to store them really well. we just take the bag that's in and fold it over and tuck it into the sides of the crate. And that way I've just got my single crate or multiple crates of this one variety. And so what I do is I also put the previous year's plant stake into the bag, so that if for some reason the label that's on the crate gets lost or missing or eaten by creatures, I still know which variety is in that crate. So double labeling is kind of it's just a safety thing for us, because it is always possible to lose whatever label is on your crate. So then, they just go. We are very fortunate to have a beautiful concrete floored and heated barn that we can store our dahlias in. So I don't usually use what we have is radiant floor heating. And so I don't usually use that floor heating because the barn itself stays above freezing almost through most of the winter. We could turn on that radiant floor heating though and keep it just minimally heated to, 35 or 40 degrees. So what dahlias need is anywhere between above freezing to 50 degrees is the temperature they need to stay at to store. Once it gets above 50 degrees, that's when they'll start to sprout and make roots. And you don't really want that to happen in storage because they're just wasting energy. And then, below 32 degrees, they will just freeze and turn to mush. And that's very sad and no fun. So that's how we do it. They just get stored like that. I usually just stack the crates on a pallet.
That brings full circle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I usually just stack the crates on a pallet, and then, this winter when it got too cold, we just wrapped the whole pallet stack in some frost cloth and a little bit of random fiberglass insulation that we had laying around. And that worked fine. I didn't have anybody freeze, even though, it was down to like -4 some nights. The barn's really well insulated, so I feel really it's really incredibly nice to have that storage. What I've done in the past is I had an insulated walk-in cooler, and even though it was outside, it was well insulated enough that I could put the tubers in there with just a space heater that has one of those I can't remember what they're called. It's just like a temperature block thing. It's basically just an outlet adapter, and it senses temperature. It's really cheap, and it just turns on at 35 degrees. It'll turn on the outlet at 35 degrees, and then it'll turn it off at I think 45 degrees. So that was a really good option. Worked really well for us while we had a smaller space. So starting January 1st, that's when I've been launching my Dahlia tuber shop. And so people will start shopping on January 1st and just making orders. And then the tubers stay in storage until about mid-April, when it warms up enough for me to feel confident that when I ship them, they will not freeze in the mail. It's a little late for some folks. Some people really want that early shipping, but I just don't have the capacity to create insulated boxes and do all of that for folks. So I start shipping usually around mid-April, and I do a lot of pickup sales too. So people will come to the farm to pick up, and then everything gets shipped out by May 15th, which is when I hope to have all of my tubers in the ground, if not a couple weeks before that. So then I am done with tubers and onto the Dahlia plants. That is the whole long shebang.
Well, thank you, Helen, for that thorough walkthrough of dahlias.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I got a couple wrap-up questions. They're the usuals, which is, what would you tell your younger seed-saving self?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I would just say do more. Save more, go for it. And learn as much as you can, and go ahead and read those books and go to those conferences and just do it. I think that I'm the kind of person who I have sort of analysis paralysis, right? I think about things too much and then I decide not to do the thing, or I think so much that I talk myself out of doing it. And so I would just tell myself, you got to get over it, like do the thing and save the seed, because really it's just an experiment every time, and it's a beautiful experiment. And so I would just say go for it and save as much as you can and see what happens and plant it out and see if it's better, see if it's in any way like more adapted to the climate or a better variety, or whatever. And, I'm going to take that advice this year and sort of see what I can do with maybe some zinnias and actually some snapdragons too, just because I want to see, I want to see what happens. And I want to experience the full life cycle of those plants. When I first, saw a snapdragon go to seed, doesn't often happen because I'm cutting every stem, but I did let some go to seed last year. And just the form of the seed pod is so weird. And I learned actually that the seed pod is why it has its scientific name. Its scientific name is Antirrhinum majus. And antirrhinum means big nose, or calf's nose, the nose of a calf, like a baby cow, and in Latin. And so the seed pod has these two holes in it. So it's sort of a round little pod, little puffball. And then it's got these two round holes on it that sort of look like a little nose. And it's adorable. And there's so many seeds in there in each little capsule. And I just really kind of fell in love with it. So I'm really considering trying some open pollinated snaps at some point, and trying to save seed from those. And because I assume they're pretty self-pollinating, given the form of the flower. So anyway, yes, I would just say try it all, do as much as you can, and learn as fast as you can.
And what would you say to other cut flower growers and other market growers to inspire them to start saving seeds on their farms?
Oh man, well, for cut flower growers, I would just say it is so easy. Like, it's basically just the next step. You don't have to really do anything else to start doing this. And the seed that you get is going to be so much more special to you. And it's going to be grown on your farm with your practices, and it's going to be so much better than what you can get even from the best seed companies that aren't in your region. And just the process of doing it is very meditative. It's very, it's just very fulfilling, empowering, very cyclical. It feels like you're doing the right thing. It feels like the right thing to do. And so I just want people to have that feeling. It's so worth it. It's even the smallest bit, just a little bit, just those few Bupleurum seed heads that you can smash into a bucket. It is so worth it. And then planting it out next year, or giving it to your friends. Like, I gave seed to a friend, one of my interns, and she took it to Georgia and grew it there. And I just think it's magical to think about your seeds going to new places, even if it's just down the street, and growing and being magical there. And then, for veg growers, on our farm, veggies and flowers grow together. And so it's just sort of natural for us to want to grow seed and want to have those varieties that are really adapted to our climate. And I think, the process of growing vegetables for seed is even more magical sometimes, because sometimes it takes so long, to save that carrot or the onions or brassicas, right? Save them, overwinter them, in storage, and then plant them out in the spring. And then, and selecting the roots, over the when you're harvesting, and then watching that plant do the thing that it is meant to do is just, it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful in so many different ways. And so for me, like, watching our vegetable grower friends grow seed is also, it's just the right thing. It's just got to be done too, so that we have more food sovereignty, more seed sovereignty, just more adapted varieties that we can really rely on. As we know, we can't be dependent on really the supply chain. We've learned that, over COVID and throughout the aftermath of that. And so I think for all of our security and peace of mind and vibrance and just the future. It's so, so important to try. And so just what a magical process. What a way to get to know a plant better and to watch it really fulfill its purpose. I just love it. I can't recommend trying it enough.
Now, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you? Well, I got you here, Helen.
Oh man.
It's okay to say no.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I feel like I talked so much, so I am gonna say no. But I want to, I just want to say thank you. It's so fun to talk about this stuff. I'm really, really glad that you're doing the podcast. It is so needed. And I really hope to hear from more flower growers, because there's, maybe this is the thing that I would like to say. For cut flower growers, there's really not a lot of information out there about how to grow seed and what the isolation distances are, and what the seed pod or what the fruit looks like, and what are the best methods of getting it out of of doing the threshing and winnowing. There's just not very much information. Like, I've read all the books, and they're all on vegetable crops. And so I'd really love to see a compendium of flower seed growing techniques, or at least seed harvesting techniques, and see that focused on more. So I really want to see more cut flower growers trying at least the things that are easy, so the things that you have in your field that are like, you only grow one variety of that species. Like for me, it's like bells of Ireland or Bupleurum or safflower, or any of those things that are just that one thing in the genus that you grow, or even the one species. Just try it, because it's going to come back true. Nobody else is around growing that thing, almost guaranteed, unless you are like me on a vegetable farm with a grower who likes to grow carrot seed, and you want to grow your Daucus or a Dara seed at the same time. So that can be a problem, but we've worked it out with timing. But it's really, I'd love to just hear from more flower growers about how they're doing seed, and what their techniques are, because it's just so hard to know what the best way is, and what you can save and what you can't save, and what the isolation distances are, and what's worked for isolating and what hasn't. So
duly noted.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Helen, and having this conversation and talking about seeds. And I hope you have a great season. And I hope it's not too sleepless a night as you're thinking about your dahlias under the snow.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Dan. It's been great talking. And I hope more people out there will start just shaking the seeds off into their buckets.
And that's episode 6 of the Seed Growers Podcast. A huge thanks to Helen Skiba for being on the podcast. You can find Helen on Instagram as Artemis Flower Farm, and visit her website and online store at artemisflowerfarm.com. Helen also has a blog post series on saving flower seeds and a blog post about Dahlia duper production and profitability on her website. Links are in the show notes. A huge thanks to Sophie Sedelton for the theme music. You can hear more of their music at sophiesedelton.com. The Seed Growers Podcast is produced in part by no-till growers with the help of our sponsors, the Bauda Family Initiative on Canadian Seed Security and the Organic Seed Alliance. A huge thanks to Jackson Roulette and Jesse Frost of No-Till Growers for making this podcast happen. Jackson also hosts the Collaborative Farming Podcast, and recently he had Helen on as a guest in the podcast episode about the Treehouse Farm Collective, and there was also a YouTube video a couple weeks ago also about the Treehouse Farm Collective. You can find more seed growing resources on my blog at goingtoseed.net. While you're there, you can subscribe to my newsletter full of seed growing, crop planning, and farm spreadsheets. If you haven't already subscribed to this podcast, now's the time. There's another episode coming next week. Until then, happy farming.